Hello, I'm Aasheerwad Dwivedi and I'll be talking about innovation. Innovation in general and specifically innovation in India. The structure of the lecture will be that in the beginning I will talk about how innovation is tackled in economic theory, different kind of theories which talks about innovation, its importance in economic growth, and then I will basically talk about economic geography of innovation in India, an empirical analysis, which is a paper that is done by me and Akanksha Arora together. So because we are talking about innovation, let's start with something very, very innovative. There is a data analytics tool used by Google which is called Ngram. Now this tool is used basically to tell you how frequently a word is used in a given time period. And what I have done is I have used the same tool to see the frequency of word innovation used from 1800 till 2010. And there is a plot Google gives you. For the word innovation, what you will find very interestingly is that after 1940, the frequency of the word innovation used in different kind of published work has increased significantly. So what I'm trying to say is that in the last 50-60 years, innovation is the buzzword. It is used in a lot of context, both in theory and in the policy circles. Broadly speaking, it means a new idea, a creative idea, some new imagination, both in terms of theory and application as well. As it happens with everything which is very popular, sometimes it is misused as well, which you can see very clearly with the funny quote that I'm using. Now let's talk about how economic theory tackles innovation. So in economic theory, there is great importance of innovative activity. One way in which we link innovative activity with economic growth in economic theory is via technological development. We all understand that innovation is extremely important for technological development, and technological development is very important for economic growth. So we can categorize everything in economic theory under basically three categories and try to see how these three categories of theories consider innovation. So the first category or the first type of economic theory is neoclassical growth models. So neoclassical growth models talks about what are the sources of economic growth using neoclassical production function. The first most popular neoclassical growth model, the solo growth model, tells you that technological development is the key to economic growth. Other factors of production doesn't have growth effects, they just have level effects. Now, although the solo model establishes technological development as source of growth, the source of technological development is considered to be exogenous in that model. So although the model tells you that a country needs to have higher technological development for higher economic growth, but the model doesn't explain you from where you get technological development. Now, further development in the neoclassical growth model leads to Romer's endogenous growth model, which again tells that technological development is key to economic growth, but in that model, technological development is endogenous to the model, and it says that new ideas, innovation, more people working in research and development is basically source to economic growth. So this strand of literature clearly establishes that innovation is very crucial to economic growth. Another kind of literature that talks about innovation is evolutionary economics, which is basically inspired by ideas of Schumpeter, which says that that innovation is basically a path-dependent process, and it also puts a lot of importance to innovation in economic growth. Third kind of literature which is very important in the innovation framework, and it is extremely important these days, is the innovation systems approach. Now, innovation systems approach sees innovative activity as a complex interactive process. It doesn't see innovation as a linear process. So basically it doesn't agree to the fact that more R&D investment will lead to higher innovative activity. They believe that the overall environment, specifically infrastructure, institution, the social context in which you are innovating is also extremely important for higher innovative output. It's basically considering, apart from investment, also things like infrastructure investment, institution, culture, interaction between different agents to be very important for innovation. But for all these, the three strands of literature that I'm talking about places a lot of importance to innovation in economic development. If we simplify the problem and try to understand innovation, what we see is that there are two important questions that one should try and understand. The first is that what is the, the first question would be to try and analyze what is the source of innovation in a particular country. So basically we try to say that what leads to higher innovation in a country. And another equally important question will be that even if, let's say, a country doesn't have capacity to innovate, what is its capacity to absorb innovation that is happening in other countries? So basically what I'm trying to say that, let's say if there is a developing economy which doesn't have enough capacity to innovate, but if it has capacity to take innovation that is happening at other places and use it, it is also going to be very helpful to that particular country. And what we see is that both these things, that is a capacity to innovate and capacity to absorb innovation that is happening at other places, these two things are considered to be the function of similar variables like investment in R&D, education in training, circulation of idea, technology transfer mechanism, agglomeration economies, etc. So basically these factors are extremely important to understand the level and growth of innovative activity in any particular country. Now in this particular lecture, I will be specifically focusing on one important variable, that is agglomeration economies. So I'll be basically trying to analyze what is the role of agglomeration economies in developing innovative capacity of a particular area in general, and specifically I'll be using the data of India to analyze this particular question. Before I get into the actual data, I want to say that agglomeration economies has always played a very key role in innovative activity and general economic growth as well. And what is very interesting is that with reduction in transportation cost in the late 90s and early 2000s, a lot of people predicted that agglomeration economies are not important, because with reduction in transportation cost, it's not necessary that people and industries locate at same place, which is the basic which is the basic idea behind agglomeration. So certain empirical facts are very interesting to see in this context. One is that we find that innovative activity is even more concentrated than manufacturing activity. Secondly, we see that in all the countries, innovative activity is not uniformly distributed across space, even with reduction of transportation cost. So we clearly see that agglomeration economy still holds a lot of importance, and specifically in terms of innovation in creation of new ideas, agglomeration economies are extremely important. So how do we understand the greater role of agglomeration economies, or the greater role of being together in creation of new ideas. So basically, this can be understood by understanding the idea of knowledge sharing. So people who are doing an experiment and people who work in, let's say, a certain kind of a specialized area, they like to interact. And this interaction leads to higher learning. But what has happened is that knowledge, which we can also see as an idea, are basically, a lot of ideas can be codified. Now, once an idea can be codified, or if knowledge can be codified, it's very easy for us to transfer it from one place to another. So basically, to share codified knowledge, it's not necessary for people to be together. But what has been found is that more and more there is lower role of codified knowledge in innovation. What is more important for innovation is a special kind of knowledge which is called tacit knowledge. What can be the understanding of tacit knowledge? Now, tacit knowledge, we should try and understand it with an example. Now, as I told you earlier, codified knowledge can be shared from one place to another. On the other hand, tacit knowledge cannot be shared from one place to another. Why is this kind of knowledge very important? First of all, because it can't be shared, so it is shared by people who interact. That's one thing. Secondly, sometimes failure in an experiment is also a great learning, but failure of an experiment is seldom published. So people get to know all the successful experiments across the world, but people don't get to know the failures of an experiment, which sometimes is an important step towards the success of an experiment. And the failure of the experiment is always shared by people who interact. And interaction is still today is much better when people interact face to face. Though technology has made interaction much easier, but still today people who are in close proximity to each other interact about failures too in a much better way. That's why tacit knowledge is understood to be much more important than codified knowledge. And in utilizing tacit knowledge, agglomeration economies, as I discussed earlier, it's still today very, very important. So in creation of ideas, in innovative activity, there is importance of tacit knowledge. And that is why agglomeration economy just still today plays a very, very important role in innovative activity. Now what we'll do is we'll try and see this particular idea and how much it is applicable in India. So the first step is to try and understand the geography of innovation in India. Now, to try and understand the geography of innovation in India, we must have a variable or a data set or some sort of a proxy for innovative activity. Now, in literature, one of the most popular proxy for innovative activity is patent application. Actual patent counts are actually a better proxy than patent application, but in case of India, at a district level, we do not have the data for patents. We have only data for patent application. So what I have done here is that I have on the map of India, you will see that there is a heat map of India at district level using patent application. Now, what is very, very striking about this map is that you will find that the most of India is covered by a light gray color. Light gray color means that there is no patent application from that part of India. And you can very clearly see on the map that the most part of India is covered by light gray color. Another shade is the golden color. Now the golden colors are areas which have patent applications, but not as much as the dark red areas. You will find in the map that there are very few dark red areas. These are the areas where innovative activity is very, very concentrated. So these are the areas in India where innovation happens. So for example, we can very clearly see that the metropolitan areas of Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, these are the areas which are dark red areas, and these are the areas where innovation is happening at much larger scale than other part of the India. Another striking feature that you find in the map is that the patent areas, or the areas where innovative activity is happening in India, are continuous zone. So there is a core periphery kind of a structure where there is a core which is the dark red area, and around that core there are areas where there is some patent application or innovative activity, but what we'll find is that as we move away from the core, or as we move away from the red areas, what we'll find is that after some distance we move to the gray areas. Means as we move away from the center or the core or the dark red areas, what we find is that the patenting activity or the innovative activities start declining and it dies out after a point. So it captures two things. One is that patenting activity or innovative activity in India is very heavily concentrated. Secondly, we also capture through this map an idea of knowledge spillover. So knowledge spills from the core to the nearby areas, and as expected, this sharing of knowledge dies out after a distance, and hence we reach to areas where there is no patenting activity or there is no innovative activity. So this map of India, or the geography of innovation of India through this map, very clearly tells us that innovative activity is concentrated, and areas which are closer by to the innovative areas are also getting a lot of benefits in terms of positive externality from the core. So what the next step would be to try and model this particular idea. So we will try to do some kind of econometric analysis to try and capture what are the factors which guide innovative activity in India. So what we saw in the map, we'll try to do a econometric model, fit a econometric model on that, and try to understand what are the factors that impact innovative activity in India. But before that, we'll very briefly, let's try and discuss the existing important literature on innovation. So innovation and agglomeration is widely researched, and one of the most and the first study on agglomeration was done by Alfred Marshall, where he talks about benefits of agglomeration, which was basically in terms of lower transportation cost, sharing idea, and a common labor pool. So according to him, these are the reasons why industries try to cluster together. This is the reason why there is clustering. And coming up further onwards, using Marshall's ideas, a lot of economists have tried and studied the idea of agglomeration in innovation and knowledge spillover. But what I want to specifically point out from literature is that most of these studies which try to relate agglomeration benefits with innovation largely focuses on the developed country. So most of these studies are or most of the existing studies is based either in United States or Europe. There are very few studies that tries to talk about agglomeration and innovation in developing economies, specifically in case of India, and that too at district level. Before the work that me and Akanksha did, there is a work by Megha Mukim which tries and captures agglomeration and innovation in India at district level. Why I'm emphasizing on district level, that I'll be discussing further in the lecture, but talking about agglomeration at district level is kind of crucial. So apart from the study that we did, Megha Mukim's study is the only other study that talks about agglomeration and innovation in India at district level, and this is the case for other developing economies as well. So there is this gap in the literature that we try to fill and study that how is agglomeration and innovation related in a developing economy like India. So let's talk about the data set a bit. Now as I told earlier that we are taking patent application as proxy for innovative activity. So if we see this particular data, what we find is that innovative activity in India with some fluctuation has almost been constant after 2003-04. And what we also find is that the proportion of patent application that is filed in India, so this proportion has gradually moved in favor of Indian applicant rather than a foreign applicant. So Indian citizen applying for patent application in India is then this number has increased significantly after 2003-04. Earlier there used to be a lot of foreign applications, less number of Indian applications. This has mostly to do with the changing framework of intellectual property right in India. Then what we try and do is that we try to fit a econometric model. So we try to, as I said earlier, we try to study the factors, or we try to see that what variables or what factors determine innovative activity in Indian districts. So the dependent variable in the econometric model is the number of patent application district wise in India. So if we try and understand some basic statistics of the dependent variable, what we find is that there is very high inter-district variation in India. So basically the range of this data, the dependent variable data, is a minimum 0, maximum 1092. So most of the districts in India have 0 patent application and the maximum is 1092. And what we find is that in 2011-12, 410 out of 626 districts in India have no patent application. And the districts of Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi, Pune and Kolkata combined had 70% of all patent application in India. So basically, two striking features of the dependent variable is that there are a lot of zeros, and secondly, the standard deviation of the dependent variable is higher than, or in fact much higher than, mean. So we have a count data dependent variable, and what we find is that specific characteristics of this data is that we don't have mean variance equality and there is a lot of zeros. So this kind of a data set cannot be econometrically modeled using normal distribution. So we try the count data models in terms of Poisson, negative binomial and zero inflated version of Poisson and negative binomial as well, because of non-mean variance equality and a lot of zeros in the model. So while econometric modeling this idea, we use the knowledge production function, which has been very popular in this kind of literature. Originally, what the knowledge production function says is that innovative activity in a particular firm or in a particular region is function of R&D investment in that region or in that firm. But what we do here is that we augment or change the knowledge production function not just with R&D investment but also with agglomeration economies and also with variables which captures R&D spillover. Now, while using knowledge production function, an extremely important question to tackle is the level of disaggregation or aggregation that you will be using. So basically in India we can do this study at the country level or at state level or at district level or at town and village level. Now if we are talking about agglomeration at country level, it doesn't make any sense. It's too big a aggregation to be studying agglomeration economies. Again, if we try to study this at state level, this too is a too large area to study agglomeration. So what we do is we try and study agglomeration economies at district level. What we believe is that district level is the right level of aggregation to capture agglomeration economies, and this is supported by literature as well. So we have the dependent variable, which is the number of patent application in districts in India, and we'll be using knowledge production function. Now, what are the independent variable? One key independent variable is will be localization economies, which is a kind of agglomeration economies. This basically, using the employment data, what we try to see is are similar kind of industries clustering together in a district or not. This is considered to be one of the most important source of agglomeration benefits. Another kind of another variable which captures agglomeration economies is Herfindahl index, which tries to capture diversity. So basically, it tries to say that not only similar kind of industries, but what if different kind of industries are clustering together in a district. Sometimes different kind of industries clustering together in a district is much better for innovative activity than the same kind of industries clustering together in a district. So we have localization economies and Herfindahl index to capture agglomeration benefits in a district. Now, another important independent variable is a variable which captures R&D spillover. So as we discussed while discussing the map, that it is beneficial if you are located near an innovative area, and this benefit dies out with distance. So we create two variable, access 1 and 2. The access variable tries and capture the R&D spillover, and to as I said earlier, that the benefit dies out with distance. So we create these two variables, one with range of 200 kilometer and another with range of between 200 and 500 kilometer. And what we expect is that the variable which is capturing till 200 kilometers should have stronger spillover effect, and between 200 and 500 kilometer the intensity should fall because you're going away from the core. So one very important thing to do when we are trying to create the access variable is to try and to create distance between two districts in India. Now, what is very interesting in such kind of calculation is usually the shortest distance between 2 points, which will be the two districts on the globe, is always a straight line. But Earth being a sphere, there is no straight line. So what we do is that we use the idea of orthodromic distance calculation between two districts, and by doing this orthodromic distance calculation, what we do is that we normalize the R&D expenditure of the nearby district by dividing by dividing the R&D expenditure between those districts with the shortest distance between those two districts. So this is how we create access 1 and access 2 variable. Then we have other variables to specifically control, and those control variables are largely in category of infrastructure and institution. As we said in the earlier as well, that the innovation system perspective gives a lot of importance to institution and infrastructure of a region as well, not just R&D investment. So we try to control the econometric model for infrastructure and institution as well. So basically we have two econometric model. Model 1, what we have done is that instead of creating an aggregate institution and infrastructure index, what we do is we take individual variables which captures different aspect of infrastructure. And in model 2, what we do is we use both infrastructure index and institution index. So for example, in econometric model 1, patent application in a district is function of R&D spending, localization index, Herfindahl index, access 1, access 2, general education, technical education, electricity, banking, and institution index. So as we can see very clearly, general education, technical education, electricity and banking are different kind of infrastructure variable. General and technical education can be seen as social infrastructure, electricity can be seen as physical infrastructure, and banking can be seen as financial infrastructure. So we are trying to see that how these individual infrastructure variable impacts patenting activity apart from the usual agglomeration, access and R&D spending. And in the second model, what we have done is we have created a aggregate infrastructure and institution index using principal component analysis. Now, why these two kind of model is used is basically we try to see that infrastructure and institution both, they are a sum of a lot of things. So everything that we see around us largely can be seen part of an infrastructure and they reinforce each other. So ideally in the individual variables should not be that effective, rather than the index should be more effective, and we are trying to capture this aspect by taking two different econometric model. And as you can see, both the econometric models we have state fixed effect and district fixed effect. So basically what we are trying to say is that we are trying to control both the econometric model both in terms of state and district for the state and district level characteristics which are not specifically used in the econometric model. So we run Poisson, negative binomial, zero inflated Poisson and zero inflated negative binomial in both the models, and what we find is that first of all, both agglomeration economies and that is Herfindahl index and localization index are very important and crucial for innovative activity. So they are both they have positive impact on innovative activity, and they also have they are also statistically significant. Similarly, both the axis variable to have expected sign, that is a positive sign, and they are also mostly statistically significant in all the model. And we also see in most of the models that as we move to a higher distance, the intensity of the spillover reduces. So the model basically proves the hypothesis that was that as we go away from the core, the impact or the positive spillover reduces. We also see that R&D stock, electricity, banking and institution index also are have positive impact and are statistically significant as well. In some cases, in the first model, we don't see infrastructure variables to be significant. This is basically because we feel that when we come to the index capture the effect of infrastructure in a better way rather than just using individual variables. Similarly, in the second model also, we get the same result, very similar result, that agglomeration economies, access variable, R&D stock, all are statistically significant and have positive impact on innovative activity, and both infrastructure and institution index are also statistically significant and have positive impact. And we can see, or we also feel that the model 2 is basically a better fit to the situation where we are trying to understand what determines innovative activity in districts in India. Another thing that should be understood that you can refer to the paper that we'll be putting as study material. There, if you go in detail, you understand that the data table that we are showing in the lecture are incident rate ratio, and any incident rate ratio which is greater than 1 means positive impact, and the detail of how to calculate incident rate ratio and all is there in the paper. So what we find basically from the model in terms of policy recommendation is that agglomeration economies are extremely important for any kind of innovative activity, and if we see the intensity or the degree of impact, what we find is that Herfindahl index in most of the cases has more impact than localization index. So basically what we're trying to say is that diversity in terms of clustering of economic activity in district it provides more innovation than clustering of same kind of innovative activity. Secondly, we also see that the impact of positive spillover dies as we move away from the core. So axis 200 has always higher intensity than axis 200 to 500. So staying closer to innovative area is always very important. Also, we found is that education is extremely important, and as we said earlier, that education is extremely important not just to generate new ideas, it is also very, very crucial to absorb innovation that is happening at other places. So if we do not have a good level of human capital, even if we want to borrow a new technology from somewhere else, we will not be able to utilize upon it. Also other sort of infrastructure in terms of electricity, road and other variables are also very crucial as expected for innovative activity. So what we want to what we should take out from the lecture is that wherever there is thinking on innovation policy, which is kind of very important these days, every country has their own innovation policy, it must be done by taking consideration of innovation in context of agglomeration benefits. And also we should try and understand that local institution and local infrastructure are very important. So we should not try to follow a one size fit all policy because it doesn't fit. We must try and take care of local institutions and local infrastructure to promote higher order of innovation. And this is the crux of the lecture that we try and understand. So government should try and promote innovative activity by taking into consideration the local endowment both of human capital and institutions. Also, some kind of agglomeration benefit must be taken care of, and in that context, because Herfindahl index as we have seen is very, very significant and has a positive impact on innovation, I also want to emphasize that urbanization is also very, very important for innovation. So most of the innovative activity across the world happens in urban areas. So although there are a lot of challenges in the cities in India, basically because of a lot of rural urban migration, a lot of people migrate to cities, and infrastructure crumbles day by day. There is a lot of pressure in both in terms of transportation, water and sanitation in most of Indian cities. But still, government should keep this in mind that urbanization or the urban areas are where innovation happens. So they should keep promoting such kind of activity in these cities. Some kind of hubs like taking clue from Silicon Valley should be created in cities like Bangalore and Bombay. Also one should promote better infrastructure development in these areas. Otherwise, there will be too much congestion in these areas. So in conclusion, we can say that the history of human development is also a history of innovation. We can see that from the discovery of wheel to the modern computers, we have come a long way forward. And in that context, we should also see the latest innovation that is related to artificial intelligence and fourth industrial revolution, where there is a lot of fear related to machine replacing human being, and people are thinking that with more and more technological development, there is always going to be some kind of disruption. This is true, and history has told us that whenever there has been new technological development for a specific period of time, there has been challenges faced by the labor force. But in the long run, both machine and human beings are complementary to each other. They are not substitute to each other. This is the history of technological development in the world had shown us. That's why we should see the latest technological development as beneficial to us and try to take more and more benefit from us. Thank you.